Welcome to Viewpoint on ILTV, where we bring you thought leaders, stakeholders, and other experts from the Middle East and beyond. I'm Emelie Schrader, and today we'll be speaking with the Crown Prince of Iran, Reza Pahlavi, who in recent years has become a leading voice for the Iranian people in the fight against the regime in Iran. Your Highness, it's an honor to have you with us. The Crown Prince of Iran, Reza Pahlavi, thank you for joining us today. Now, I want to start by asking you, there's a lot of people speaking about the Gaza war, but the agenda of the Islamic Republic, of course, extends far beyond just Israel and their terror proxies. Do you think that the West understands the nature of the Islamic Republic? And if not, how can we help educate them?
Well, the most important factor in understanding the nature of the regime is look at its behavior and consistency in its behavior ever since its existence. The DNA of this regime is the complete opposite of the desire and aspiration of Iranians who, let's not forget, were the first hostages of this regime. And it has always tried to use Iran as a launching pad for their ideological indoctrination of the rest of the world and exporting this ideology. In fact, their military branch, the IRGC, is mandated to help them export this ideology all the way across the world. And of course, the proxy war is also one way that they keep the focus away from themselves, engage in regional conflicts, and the regime has always fomented instability in order to keep itself in power, repression at home and conflict abroad. So I think if you look at the past 40 years, and my biggest criticism of the basic flaw in Western governments' analysis or policy vis-a-vis the regime was because it was based on a false premise of behavior change as a goal. And if you look at everything that followed, whether they were using diplomacy or strength in terms of carrot and the stick approach, as we say, and it was based on behavior change. Whereas we have always argued that the only solution is actually an end to this regime and not expecting any behavior change from them. So I think by the passage of time, it appears like this understanding is becoming a bit clearer. But is it necessary to simply understand? I think the next steps have to be taken. You cannot expect for this evil regime to disappear by itself. You need to actually put an end to it. Now, I always argue that this is a campaign of Iranians, by Iranians at home, but they deserve to have some support because all these years they had no supports whatsoever. And there are ways to achieve that, not by means of foreign intervention or military attacks, but by means of invigorating and equaling the playing field for Iranians to be able to overcome this regime. But why is it in the best interest of the free world as well? We're not asking them to shed a tear for us out of compassion. At least stick to your values of freedom and democracy and be defending the rights of Iranians to self-determination, which is what they ask. But you need to help them the same way we help many dissidents in other countries overcome their dictatorial system, authoritarian system. And it's consistent with the same approach, that if you believe that Iranians deserve to have the same freedoms that you as Westerners enjoy in your countries, then don't let them be thrown under the bus by cutting a deal with this regime that represses them, that kills them, that tortures them, that executes them, that shoots bullets into the eyes of their young people, and instead say, we are in solidarity with you, we will help you overcome. I think that has to be the major shift in attitude, because staying within the status quo and hoping by miracle to have a change of behavior is a total waste of time. And as we're getting more critically close to the red line of nuclear threat, and we don't explore an opportunity of having change before resorting to more dire measures, that would be such a historically criminal thing to do. And Iranians are saying to the whole world, we are on your side, why don't you come and help us?
Now, you've spoken quite a bit about maximum pressure on the regime and maximum support for the Iranian people, as you alluded to in the previous question. I'm wondering what that actually looks like in terms of policy. What can the West actually do to have policies that will support the people and promote regime change?
The most important thing, considering not the desired outcome, as we've seen either in Afghanistan or Iraq, is to understand that change in Iran is not going to be tantamount to another failed state. Because the Iranian people are ready for that change, and have demonstrated their capability if given the chance. That's the whole premise of our argument, that Iranians are ready for change. That if we have a scenario whereby we can guarantee the maximum defections of elements stuck with the regime that don't believe in this regime any longer, and they want to be part of the solution, that's the best way to guarantee a smooth transition without having, at the end of the day, post-regime, a situation of anarchy and disorder. So it's a controlled implosion with an actual game plan, with a transfer of authority and transitional governance, which is part of my campaign and what I'm trying to explain. So we can get to a point that Iranians can finally say, now it's up to us to decide for ourselves. We have a mechanism, we have a process, and we have, beyond the obvious liberty, freedom, democracy, and what have you, but a roadmap to recovery, that the country has the opportunity to now bring in foreign investment, address the issue of employment, job creation, everything that economically makes sense to the average person on the streets, because the rest is all motherhood and apple pie. But how do you actually translate it to something that is beneficial, not only for Iranians, but for those who will benefit from it? So it's a win-win scenario. That makes much more sense than hoping that this regime, with its corrupt mafia in charge, continuing its proxy wars, is going to offer any better solution than it had in the past 40 years. There has to be that change of paradigm.
When it comes to the state of Israel, there have been some voices within Israel who have advocated for separatism as a means of weakening the regime. Now, of course, this isn't the case. In a way, it actually strengthens the regime. This is a conspiracy that the regime itself has spewed for years in order to, cut down the dissidents and undermine them, saying that people want to divide Iran. Why is separatism wrong? Why is this actually a way of strengthening the regime?
Well, first and foremost, to give the regime an excuse to crack down even more in the name of, protecting the land. But Iranians in nature are proud of their past and history. Iran was a melting pot long before America became an example of it in latter years. For centuries, we had ethnic groups, different religions live under the same roof side by side and in peace. That was the nation state that Iran was for centuries. And to this day, especially when you look at the Masa Amini situation and the revolution, in the four corners of Iran, they were treating it as a national cause. It was not a Kurdish issue or an Azerbaijani issue and so on and so forth. Now, there are separatists. I believe that the numbers are minimal. There are fringe arguments, but they're given too much a platform, and that's dangerous, and I tell you why. Because Iranians will hesitate when they think that there are certain governments or other forces at play that will be encouraging this kind of separatism, and Iranians are proud of the land is sacred, and there's a reason why you have a sense of national identity. There's a flag that represents a nation, and that's our red line anyway as nationalists. And we believe that we don't need to get there, because I'm not saying that ethnic groups have not suffered at the hand of this regime. But what Iranian is left in Iran that hasn't suffered on this regime? You have suffered because of your ethnicity, you have suffered because of your faith, you have suffered because of your sexual orientation, you have suffered because you're just a woman and treated as a second-class citizen. This is the doing of this regime. That's not Iran. That's not what is in the heart of every Iranian, that respect one another, that don't care whether you're Muslim or Jewish or Zoroastrian or atheist. They don't care whether you're leftist or rightist, so long as you observe the rules of the game and democracy and respect and mutual tolerance. This is part of our, I think, to some extent, culture that was completely devastated by this regime. So I think the guarantee in terms of having equality and end to any kind of discrimination rides solely on what we think is this formula, which is a secular democratic system replacing this autocratic religious dictatorship.
Now, you spoke at the Israeli-American Council Conference calling for peace and cooperation between the State of Israel and a future free Iran, even a Cyrus Accords as a follow-up to the Abraham Accords. What would a future Israel-Iran relationship look like in a free Iran?
A true strategic partnership in the best interest of not just the two countries, but our entire region. Look at the challenges that we face. Not just the region, the whole world does. climate change, economic issues, water shortages, which is a major issue now as far as Iran is concerned. And in fact, part of the reason I traveled to Israel was to talk to Israeli experts that are the best in the world in terms of water management and understanding the challenges and recommendation as to how to deal with it from every aspect, and many other things, technology, industry, innovation, and what have you. I think the whole region will benefit from it, but first and foremost, it's an element of stability. And if the Middle East has always been challenged by these conflicts that we've had, I think it's important to show and demonstrate that two critical countries in that region can work with one another. It was in the same spirit that when my father was very much helpful to President Sadat, when at the time he established a relationship with Golda Meir, and it led to an Egyptian-Israeli peace agreement. It means that in the right climate you can achieve peace. And again, in the same spirit, how could you possibly have stability and peace in a region that you have one element and a terrorist regime that is constantly fomenting conflict? So a different Iran with the right partners would be able to not only set the stage for the kind of climate that is conducive to not only peace and something that everybody wants, but all the opportunities behind it. Economic development, interaction, it's good, it's profitable for everyone. I think that's an approach that will have many supporters, from Saudi Arabia to Egypt to Israel to Syria to all the countries that currently are stuck with the status quo.
Absolutely. Your Highness Reza Pahlavi, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.